Today, we talk with what many people call the doomsday preppers.
I'm preparing my family for the imminent collapse of the United States economy.
Next, Kurt wants to add armor plates and weld them seamlessly to the body of the SUV.
Everyone in this space has probably heard the stereotype of the crazy prepper. The sad part is that most stereotypes have some kind of foundation in reality. That's not to say stereotypes are perfectly accurate or fair.
Alright, you guys promise not to get mad at me, huh?
More like a caricature or exaggeration.
3, 2, 1. Ta-da!
The key is breaking down the stereotype and correcting the source of the issue. And there's definitely quite a few issues in the world of prepping, to the point that even individuals who want to be prepared don't want to be called a prepper or be associated with one. Let's break down the 5 key issues and observations that hinder you from having a successful and balanced dialogue with someone about preparing for emergencies. Number 1, you're too focused on extreme scenarios. Y2K, 2012, the Bible Code, peak oil, global warming killing everything by 2005, Russian nukes, the virus of 2020. These are or were issues that different ends of the political spectrum focused on and made a cornerstone of their talking points, and ironically, they're the same in this particular way. It's a form of absolute hysteria used to get people in the emotional zone where they can be easily manipulated. Whether it's buying crap you don't actually need or scoring one for the team for those who treat political parties like a football team to cheer for, emotional manipulation based on fear is powerful. I want you to ask, how likely is it that a Bronze Age author purposefully left codes in the Bible that predicted the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin? How likely is it that the Mayans were right about 2012? How likely is it that your neighbor is going to cannibalize you due to a total collapse in the next few weeks if you live in Albuquerque? Most people who get into prepping want to survive a job loss, the inability to work due to caring for a sick family member, coming across a wrecked vehicle, protect themselves in bad areas of the world, or learn how not to die if they get lost in the woods. Give these examples. Stop talking about your worst fantasy. Focusing on more practical scenarios like the aftermath of natural disasters or economic downturns resonates better with people and encourages preparedness without inducing unnecessary panic. You don't want to turn people away from your message before you can even deliver the meat of your message. Number 2. You've let preparing devolve into hoarding, and it shows. Reddit is a place that gets a lot of hate, but just like anything that features a conglomeration of human experiences, there's gold everywhere. This post talked about cleaning a granddad's storage area for his preps, expired cans with the labels rotting off, meat going bad, saved a decade or more. These are the type of things that prepping can lead to, and hoarding is definitely a mental health issue. It is unacceptable to have your food or your gear go into a state of complete disarray. It's one thing to be overwhelmed, but if you're hanging on to molding spices from 2005 and you can't carry your gear a mile down the road because you've neglected your health and reality, do you think you'll reach anyone when you preach preparedness? You look like a person who can't even take care of themselves, and people will judge the quality of your advice by your own capability and appearance. This is why it's important to stick to foods that you're going to rotate on a constant basis. You should be using your preps. And especially if someone is trying to sell it to you because it's a quote-unquote good idea, really evaluate it for yourself. Is this going to be something that I can use in my day-to-day life and incorporate into an emergency loadout, or is it just going to sit on a shelf somewhere and gather dust? This next part is actually very important. Number 3. You have unregulated emotional responses. From ancient philosophical debates to modern-day political polarization, emotional responses and name-calling have hindered constructive dialogue. We've heard the various sides slinging names, So if you're trying to convince someone prepping for emergencies is in their best interest, you'd think remaining respectful and patient is the best route, right? When someone's views don't mesh exactly with another's, the tendency is to go down the attack instead of creating a dialogue. You should realize people have very strong emotional and personal experience-based perspectives in this arena. The best way to get people who are interested into preparing for an emergency but who may be going about it the wrong way isn't to knock them down, so to speak. Instead, if you have personal experience-based insight, then present them your story. If you are serious about enacting any kind of change, patience is required. By hopping on an emotional soapbox, whether it's to prove you're alpha or because you completely disagree with an opinion of another person, you make them dig in even further. In many cases, this creates a label in their mind that you and people who think like you are on opposites of their viewpoint. It's not even presenting it from a view of facts over feelings.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
Most people will hear you out if you're respectful and even kind. Remember that being kind doesn't equal harmless. Both Salah ad-Din Yusuf bin Ayub and Richard Coeur de Lion offered water and food to visiting envoys of the opposing side. Regulating your emotional need to prove superiority by being the loudest in the room, instead of attempting to demonstrate it, will be the fast track to isolation and ridicule. Instead of serving as the example, you become the warning. The last people that you want to push away are people who could potentially be on your side. Number 4. You lack a sense of normal. Historically, societal norms and perceptions have shaped how individuals are viewed based on their beliefs or practices. Take the example of Benjamin Lay, an 18th century Quaker abolitionist whose extreme actions, although well-intentioned, often alienated others. There's something to be said about being part of the culture at large. If you appear to be so fringe, so out there, it's easy to dismiss everything you've said as the ramblings of a crazy, paranoid person. I've repeatedly said finance, influence, trust, and local politics are key to preparing effectively. Look at the recent viral sensation of Oliver Anthony's Rich Men North of Richmond. He's not exceedingly political. In fact, the song criticizes both parties, and he's stated this.
These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control.
He doesn't wave his guns and flag as part of the core of his personality, but his message comes from the vantage point of the regular American tradesman that sees the fruit of his labor going towards things he disagrees with. It resonated with so many people across so many different points of view that his success is undeniable in spreading that message. Relatability is something that's lost the edgier you get, whether it's proving a political point, convincing someone to change their viewpoint, or getting a quote-unquote normal person to prep for emergencies. Perception matters. If you seem too out there, people might dismiss your advice altogether. Number 5. You have the seeming inability to solve basic problems. Would you take advice from someone whose life is a mess? Would you take financial advice from someone facing bankruptcy? Style advice from Sam Bankman-Fried? As unfair as it is, because there's valuable lessons to be gained from people who've faced failure, you can't begin to give advice if you don't project some kind of success. I don't mean a trouble-free life. What has been your track record of overcoming challenges? Serving as a warning of what not to do is not the same as giving good advice. When I was a boy, I believed that people over 40 had their lives figured out and that their work was able to provide the life that they had wanted. I now know that is the furthest thing from the truth. You can't be like the ghost of a doomed traveler warning others not to take the road you died on. If you want your advice to be considered as legitimate advice, you have to project success. Someone that's risen above the usual challenges. That doesn't mean you have to be a multimillionaire. Would you take advice from a small business owner who's been doing it for longer than 5 years? Relationship advice from a happily married couple who's been together for 30 years? This is the type of competency and confidence that you have to project, and it's much easier if you actually achieve it. Get your house in order before you start calling other people's out. These 5 reasons shed light on why some folks might ignore prepping advice. Remember, preparedness is about balance and practicality, not fear-mongering or hoarding. Preparedness shouldn't be about hoarding a bunker full of things that are slowly rotting. Preparedness and prevention should go hand in hand. Be practical, relatable, and balanced in your approach. Let's definitely keep the conversation going, learning from each other, and promoting a culture of readiness. Until the next video, be good, stay safe, and have a good one.